Everything good, everything good. Let me check out the stats. Yeah, it's good. Okay. Hello everyone, welcome to Paradise FFD live stream, whatever you call it. Just yeah, welcome. I'm just basically going to play some video games and of course react to some YouTube videos. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, I haven't uploaded the video in a bit. I haven't live streamed in a bit. So NBA 2K in the background, maybe some other games coming up soon. And yeah, enjoy life. Uh, so let me view if there are chats. I don't know if there are. Oh, here it is. Let's put it here. Let me see if it works. Yeah, it works. Okay. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and all that good stuff. And yeah, I'm going to be reacting to a couple of videos. I don't really want to put this. I kind of want to put that light out. It's a little dark. It's a little too dark, but I don't want to have heavy light in my face, so kind of deal with it. But it's fine. It's fine. Okay. Let me play the game. Shut up for a bit. Okay, let me put my phone down. Gotta charge my phone. Gotta charge them phones, man. Alright. So we are back into the frame. It's good. I hope everything is safe and sound. And yeah, basically reactions it is. It's not going to be the most energetic type streams, but content is content. It's good to see you guys. Maybe one day I'll be someone of notice in this crazy YouTube world. But hey, gotta be more consistent, gotta work it day after day, step by step, brick by brick, because it's not going to come falling out of the sky. You gotta work for stuff. But it's okay, because that's life. Hey, you gotta work for stuff, or else there's not a, the challenge and the journey is also good. I know that yapping bullshit. So, okay. Oh. Mm. Got me some tea, some ginger tea. It's good for your stomach and digestive systems. Take a shit. Mm. We're not control. Okay, let go. Camera good, everything good, blah blah blah. Enough yapping. Let go. I don't even see how long I can. Okay, okay, it's good, it's good. Okay, 3 minutes of yapping.
These are some of the worst All-Stars
Worst All Star Swiss County.
in NBA history. And to start things off, let's look at Kyle Korver. Don't get me wrong, Korver was a master of his craft. At his peak, he was shooting above 50% from three.
Wait, let me see the camera. Everything is good. Not that you see the. No, everything's good.
Which is pretty damn ridiculous in any way you want to look at it. But when he was selected to compete in the 2015 All-Star Game, he made himself a poster boy when it comes to some of the worst All-Stars of all time. Although they may have been the most efficient 12 points per game you've ever seen, they were still 12 points per game, and that's really all he brought to the table. I mean, at a time where the three-point revolution started to hit full swing, Kyle Korver was the best non-warrior in the NBA when it came to shooting the ball, and as the league began to really see the value in what he brought to the team, his All-Star selection may have been a bit of overreacting to a guy who wasn't even a 3-and-D guy, but just a full-on three-point specialist. Now, to give him a little bit more credit, he was a reserve for Dwayne Wade, who was unable to play, and there really weren't that many guards in the East that were putting together stellar seasons. The conference was just weak altogether. But when you put him alongside All-Stars, he's the outlier. When a guy like LaMelo Ball this season doesn't make the game, averaging 27, 5, and 7, you look back at guys like Korver and wonder how the hell did he get in there? It was more of a team achievement than a personal one. This was just kind of the year to do it. With team success and a kind of soft conference, the Hawks had been tearing up the league prior to the All-Star game as one of the best regular season teams of the decade, with players that were just above average at every position, and people believed that the Hawks deserved all of the credits and the hype that they could get. And that's where Kyle Korver came in. Now, by the time he made it, he was already 33 years old, so it should come as no surprise that he wouldn't touch an All-Star game ever again, which helps him go down as one of the oddest and maybe least deserving players to ever play in the game. At close to 50-50-90 shooting, when it comes to just doing the job you're paid to do, Kyle Korver was certainly a star in his role. But on a feel-good Atlanta Hawks squad, this raised the question about whether All-Stars and role players could fit in the same sentence. It's not that he wasn't valuable to the team, because he no doubt was, but All-Stars are usually expected to be the leaders of the team, not role players who benefit from the system they're playing in. Next up, we've got Chris the Caveman Kaman, who was able to squeeze his way into a 2010 All-Star appearance, replacing an injured Brandon Roy. That season, Chris Kaman was leading the Clippers and putting up career highs. There wasn't really any centers doing it better than him that season. He averaged 18.5 points, 9.3 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game. But his issue was that he wasn't exactly efficient for his position. He only shot 49% from the field as a big guy, and he wasn't exactly leading a winning team either, as the Clippers were 21-28 going into the break. But perhaps the most disappointing part about his All-Star appearance were the players that were snubbed because of him. A 28-year-old Carlos Boozer, who averaged 19-11 on 56% shooting as a better defender, didn't get in. A prime Monte Ellis, who averaged 25.5 points per game that season, wasn't given the opportunity either. But you can't put that on Kaman, who was put in the game due to his position, but Monte at this time, and pretty much every other time, was just so much better than Chris Kaman. As the NBA record holder for most 20-point games without ever scoring 30 points, he's just Mr. Good, not great, who had an outlier season averaging 18 when for his career he was typically around 10 to 13 a night. Among true pure centers, Kaman was the best you were going to get, I guess. He was a solid player, but definitely nothing special, and his selection could definitely be chalked down as filling the spot rather than being the best overall player for the spot, which is why fans saw his selection as undeserving and more so underwhelming. After that season, Kaman would have a catastrophic fall-off, although injuries played a role, but the point still is that he never made it back to that spot ever again. He made one boom in the NBA, which he made the All-Star team, which is kind of hilarious, which, given that his efficiency declined, appears to just be inflated stats from playing on a bad team. But nonetheless, he was awarded for his serviceable career with an All-Star selection, which kind of rules, I guess. He would
Tim Duncan, the best ever.
continue to be a decent big man, but he would never reach the level of play which
I have like a little clue about who Chris Kaman is because I think he played on the 2014 Lakers, if I am correct with that. So, that's fun, but the rest I don't really know Chris Kaman, so it is what it is.
got him to the All-Star game again, or even get close to it. But now, we're going to look at the Hall of Famer Yao Ming, who was an anomaly at his peak. Due to the loves that fans had for him over in China, Yao would be selected as the starting center in each of his 8 years in the league, including his first and his last. When you look at his stats, year after year, one of them is especially not like the other. You could argue that his rookie season didn't warrant an All-Star appearance, and you'd probably be right. But the NBA sure loved it either way. They had found a player to bring the untapped potential of the Chinese fan base, and they were banking on it. But the year I want to zero in on would be his final one. While he didn't end up playing in the 2011 All-Star game due to injury, he was still selected. But he was
I really thought Louis Scola was like an all-star, bro. I was like, hold
Well,
on.
he didn't end up playing in the
I was
2011
like, I
All-Star
was
game
like
due to
Louis
injury, he
Scola
was still selected. But here's the
NBA
craziest
all-star.
part. He
Hold
only
on.
played 5 games that season and only got 18 minutes per game in runtime. On paper, this would definitely be the worst All-Star season of all time, but it just isn't that simple. He made it on a technicality. It didn't matter how poorly or how little you played. If you got enough votes from fans, you were in. And I guess it also helped that he was going up against Nene and Andrew Bynum as his top competition in All-Star voting, but really, there's little way to justify this in any way, shape, or form. He would be replaced, of course, by
Damn,
Kevin
center spot in the West back then were kind of weak. Like for real, like of course you got Kobe, you got KD, you got Carmelo. I'm looking at like the lower page right now. Monte Ellis, Vince Carter, Louis Scola. Damn, was Louis Scola favorite back then? Blake Griffin, Paul Gasol get more votes than Tim Duncan is disrespectful, but okay. Same with Carmelo, same with KD, but okay. Yo, man, bro, Andrew Bynum, Nene, Marc Gasol, and Mecca Okafor. Damn, damn.
There's little way to justify this in any way, shape, or form. He would be replaced, of course, by Kevin Love, but it exposed the flaws in the system. Because of this incident, and when fucking Zaza Pachulia almost became a starter, the NBA tweaked the voting structure so that players couldn't get in on fan votes alone, which means that we will never see another occurrence of this ever again. So when fans are angry at the NBA for the LaMelo Ball All-Star snub this season, despite his fan vote count, they can point to this as a reason why they didn't get to see him in action. But when it was all said and done for Yao, he had put up a legendary career both on and off the court as an ambassador for the game. His name is now in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and while his 100% All-Star percentage is definitely flawed, it should not take away from the kind of player that he was. Next up, we have James Donaldson, who was an injury replacement for Steve Johnson in the 1988 All-Star game. But in hindsight, he was nowhere near All-Star material. It was another moment where the lack of center depth in the league was at full display. He averaged 7 points and 9 rebounds per game. I mean, that's like if Clint Capella or Gorgie Drang made it today. It just wouldn't happen. This guy is below average to average. His efficiency was okay, but if your job is to dunk the ball and get putbacks, you need to be efficient or else somebody else is going to step up. I said that there's a lack of centers that were All-Star worthy. While that's certainly true, it's not like there weren't other centers doing more this season. Benoit Benjamin was averaging 13 and 8 in LA. The most improved player that season, Kevin Duckworth, averaged 16 and 7, but at least he could get the nod the next year. Donaldson's selection showed once again the difficulty certain years of filling the center position at the All-Star game. Traditional centers were essential. They were all kind of the same at one point in time, outside of the few exceptions that we all remember. They were big guys who could be bruisers down low and put the ball in the basket when they needed to. There wasn't much to it, and there wasn't much variety either. The system was flawed. It was as simple as that. While it may not be as big of a problem in today's game where a lot of the top guys are big men, it posed real challenges back then with the lack of diversity. But let's take a break from the center position and look at Mo Williams, who was LeBron's second-hand man en route to his only All-Star appearance in 2009. Statistically, he had a pretty good year, averaging nearly 18 points per game and shooting 43%
Shout out Mo Williams.
from behind the arc. But apart from his efficient scoring, he really wasn't doing points per game and shooting 43% from behind the arc. But apart from his efficient scoring, he really wasn't doing anything. For a point guard, his assist levels were low at 4.1 per game, but it wasn't like he was a dog on defense with a defensive rating of 104. When you break it all down, it seems like a team achievement over an individual one. The Cavs were the top dogs in the East because of LeBron James, with a record of
LeBron James.
39 and 9 at the time. Bo was a good teammate because he let LeBron do his thing. I mean, LeBron was basically the entire team. With LeBron on the court, the Cavs had a plus 15 offensive rating, but off the court, they had a minus 6.2 rating, a 21.2 difference. Meanwhile, Williams had just a 3.4 difference. It's almost like LeBron was so good that he got 2 All-Star spots. Williams didn't even get the spot in the first place, but after Chris Bosh was ruled out of the game, Mo was given the spot instead with some help from his teammates who were upset that they thought he was snubbed. But was he? I mean, if it weren't for LeBron, Williams' names would have never been in All-Star conversations, and after he left LeBron's side, his name surely wasn't mentioned in any more. Mo Williams was a good player in the NBA, don't get me wrong. He certainly had a better career than most with a scoring ability that made him a starter level for quite a while. But it was quite elite between that and an All-Star player, which a lot of people agree was just too big to actually make. His All-Star selection was an odd one. His team deserved the praise, but his team was in all honesty just 95% one guy, while Mo benefited from being the number 2 guy, while the number 1 was a playmaker without many other options. Now, another guy from the LeBron era who was given a nod in the East was Roy Hibbert in both 2012 and 2014. During these selections, Hibbert held it down on the defensive side of the ball, while young Paul
Listen, no Roy Hibbert slander be allowed, bro. I really think the Roy Hibbert, like back in his Indiana days, like he had to, like a rule change that defenders couldn't jump like I know Roy Hibbert made the NBA change the rule. I know that. Like on the defensive side with centers, that he could not that they can't block the shot a certain way. So that's what I know. Search it up.
George
Roy
and a
Hibbert
prime Danny
change.
Granger took over on the other ends and had Hibbert in both 2012 and 2014. During these selections,
He's a two-time All-Star. Oh wow.
Hibbert held it down on the defensive side of the ball, while young Paul George and a prime Danny Granger took over on the other ends, and had his name in Defensive Player of the Year conversations, yet many people struggled to believe that his All-Star selections were really that impressive. In his first All-Star season, he averaged 12.8 points, 8.8 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. And in his second, he averaged 10.8, 6.6, and 2.2. These numbers, in all honesty, don't even matter. Roy Hibbert's value just came in rim protection, and that's it. There was nothing else anywhere close to elite in his game, and nothing I'd even say that probably meant average level. He took advantage of the verticality rule, which meant as long as the defender jumped straight up and down,
Oh, look, I know.
not into a defender, he was safe from the whistle, which frustrated people greatly. Roy was a giant and could clog the lane as well as anybody, and with a very elite defensive squad that funneled shots straight to him, this size and rim protection created one of the best defensive teams since the Pistons in 2004. For a center, he was what any team would want for a brief while, and at 27, many people thought he could keep up that same level of play, but we all know that just wasn't the case at all. We could start off looking at his shitty playoff performances, which included a couple of 0.0 rebound games, and when he left
0.0 rebounds. Whoa, hold up, brother. Hold up, brother. 0.0. Oh, okay, Chicago. Wait, hold up. I don't see 0.0 rebounds, bro. Stop the cap. Stop the cap. I don't see Nah, bro. Stop.
performances level of play, but we all know that just wasn't the case at all. We could start off looking at his shitty playoff performances, which included a couple of 0.0 rebound games, and when he left Indiana, he literally fell off a cliff. He went from being a two-time All-Star to averaging 6 points per game as a 29-year-old in Los Angeles. At the end of the day, the East was dog shit, we all know that, and Hibbert was pretty much the best you could find. He was so good at one thing, which was so crucial to the Pacers' success, that the league looked at him as a star, while given how much better bigs are today, and how catastrophic his fall-off was, this one's easy to point out as one of the worst All-Stars of his time. Shaq's final All-Star selection in the 2008-2009 All-Star season showed off the problems with evaluating former superstars in the NBA and what realm they really were in. While his numbers for the 09 All-Star game were not by any means bad at 18-8, O'Neal still made the team largely off reputation and memories. But after Al Jefferson was snubbed while averaging 23-11, people started to debate whether Shaq's All-Star appearance was snubbed while averaging 23-11. People started to debate whether Shaq's All-Star appearance was earned that season or in his glory days with the Lakers. Of course, players should be respected and recognized for their past success, but should that come at the expense of younger guys who may be doing it better? That was the problem. Shaq's All-Star season wasn't exactly undeserved, but it brought up those kinds of questions nonetheless. He would go on to win co-MVP alongside former teammate Kobe Bryant, which made for great narratives for obvious reasons, and would earn an All-NBA third-team selection by the end of that season. But that would be the last hurrah for Shaq, as he would exit the league after 2 more stints with 2 more teams in pretty ugly fashion. His inclusion in the All-Star game seemed to be based off memories of his prime, and we all know how dominant Shaq was. But at the end of the day, it entertained fans on All-Star Weekend as they got to see one of the best bigs to ever do it compete in the All-Star Weekend for one last time. So can we really be too mad? Now, Wally Szczerbiak was an extremely solid role player in the 2000s. He would get his time in the All-Star game in 2002 after a very solid year at the Timberwolves.
Serbia. Wally. Serbia, bro.
Where he averaged 18.7 points and 4.8 rebounds per game while shooting 45% from 3, and was a very solid second option to a terrifying Kevin Garnett. But when he was selected, there was some speculation because his game didn't have much diversity. People saw him as a one-dimensional player who could do one thing: score. He was a very efficient scorer, but that's all he brought to the table. He wasn't there to be a star, he was there to get buckets. Had he replicated this season time and time again, people may think of him in a different light. Superstars can normally get away with getting into the All-Star game with numbers like that because they are who the fans want to see. But Szczerbiak never made it back. And although not the worst robbery in the world, and maybe not even one at all, as a Wolves fan who briefly remembers Szczerbiak back in the day, he's one of those underrated guys you just don't expect to see at All-Star Weekend. He would keep his role as a reliable scorer for many more years, and became a true team player, even coming off the bench for a good while. But then, injuries caught up to him. First he hurt his knee, then his ankles, he would get surgery multiple times, and never come back the same. Because of those, his All-Star selection has gone down as a curious footnote in the history books. Just 1 year prior to Wally's selection, Theo Ratliff found his way into the All-Star game alongside his teammate Allen Iverson. Ratliff was a good defensive anchor, leading the league in blocks with nearly 4 per game, but wouldn't get to play after a season-ending injury, sidelining him just before the All-Star game. But offensively, he was kind of trash. He wasn't efficient, especially for a big man. He shot just below 50% from the floor, at least he had shot blocking abilities, right? It seemed like Ratliff had reached his peak, averaging the same numbers year after year, but his career was cursed after he was selected for the All-Star game. After being selected for the team, the Sixers decided it was time to move on from Ratliff, as they had just gotten Dikembe Mutombo on their squad. But in the first season with his new team, Ratliff would only play 3 games due to injury. He would come back the next season as a shot blocking threat once again, but his offensive efficiency had gone down even further. He was consistently in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, but it came with a cost. And after being moved to the Trailblazers after his time with the Hawks, Ratliff would suffer more injuries and miss a decent chunk of games year after year. His career slowly dwindled after 9 teams in 16 years. He was a defensive presence, but looking back on it, his team success combined with his defensive dependency was ultimately why he was selected for the game. Remember that Kyle Korver selection? Well, he wasn't the only Atlanta Hawk that year who was given an All-Star spot that might not have been the most deserving of it. That year, their point guard Jeff Teague would get a spot.
Oh, Jeff Teague? Jet? Bro, don't do Jet like that, bro. Come on, bro. Jet? Jet? Nah, I'm joking. But Jeff Teague, bro, listen, I like him. The podcast funny. I'm a fan of the podcast. And like he was a good player. Like he wasn't the best, but he certainly wasn't like the worst all-star vote ever, bro. Come on. Jeff Teague, come on. Put some respect on his name.
Of his own, and not as a replacement. He was a solid point guard throughout his career, and averaged 15 and 7 in his All-Star season, and would feast in passing lanes with 1.7 steals per game, even though all in all, his defense was kinda trash, as he'll tell you. His numbers were good, not great. They were respectable by any means, but nowhere near trash, as he'll tell
Jeff
you. His
Teague?
numbers were good, not great. They were respectable by any means, but nowhere near All-Star. He'll tell you. His numbers were good, not great. They were respectable by any means,
Damn,
but
Jeff
nowhere
Teague.
near All-Star worthy just on paper. He was a decent scorer that was fast and a bit inconsistent in terms of shooting and facilitating. But with the pieces set in the system around him, he was set up for success. Need I remind you how nuts this Hawks team was though? They were 43-11 going into the All-Star break. They didn't win by having a superstar, and so I guess it was tricky to decide who's All-Star worthy outside of Al Horford. So they just gave it to all 4 of their main guys, which kind of makes this look a little rough looking back at it. But Teague's selection meant that some more talented players were going to be snubbed. You could make a case for Brandon Knight or even a young Nikola Vucevic. When it comes down to it, Teague was still a very solid player for quite a while. He was the point guard for the top dog in the East and led a team that people thought would finally beat LeBron. And while it didn't, the players still deserve some recognition for what they were able to do in those seasons. But if the question becomes whether or not he should have been an All-Star, a lot of people are going to say no, as he was seen as another team success merchant that year rather than by his individual prowess. But at least his podcast is cool, so this one's pretty chill, I guess. When you talk about players past their primes that made All-Star selections based on popularity rather than their play, Kobe Bean Bryant is usually on that list. Kobe's impact on the league was undeniable. He changed the game. His poster is still on my childhood bedroom wall, and I bet a lot of you watching can say the same. His 5 titles, 18 All-Star appearances, and 15 All-NBA selections are a testament to how great of a player this guy really was. But as much as I hate to say it, a couple of those All-Star appearances at the end of his career were not really the most deserving. First off, you have the obvious one. In 2014, where like Yao Ming, Kobe barely played after tearing his Achilles tendon and fracturing his left knee, his season was cut short after just 6 games. But that didn't mean that fans weren't going to put his name on their All-Star ballots. He was voted in as the second backcourt player alongside Steph Curry as a starter. But of course, he didn't play due to injury. Then there's the case of his final season in 20.
I mean, that's not too bad, bro. And it's Kobe. 17.6. Okay.
16. While his farewell tour was bittersweet, his production on the court was obviously not his best. He averaged 18 points per game, but on a crazy low 35% shooting. And to make matters worse, the Lakers were miserable with a 17-65 record that made them the last seed in the West. And if you hadn't guessed it already, he was given the All-Star selection as a starter after receiving almost 2 million votes, nearly 300 more than Steph Curry, who
Double
got
that
the
LeBron,
second
bro.
most.
Damn.
But during his final appearance, there were a few
Second
300 more
most.
than Steph Curry, who got the second most. But during his
Oh,
final
got the second
appearance,
most.
there were a few players left out, most notably
It's like
All-NBA
what?
second team member Damian Lillard, who was dropping 25 a game. I mean, this is kind of highway robbery, but even with all of this, it's pretty hard to make a case against Kobe Bryant in an All-Star game. He meant too much to the sports, and that's kind of why Kobe Bryant's farewell showing doesn't really feel that wrong. But when people talk about the worst All-Star players in NBA history, a lot of people point at Jamal McGlure. Selected as a reserve in the Eastern Conference for the 2004 All-Star game, McGlure averaged 13 and 10 for the New Orleans Hornets. The numbers weren't bad, I guess, but they weren't memorable at all. I talk about basketball for a living at this point, and I don't know who the fuck this guy. Who the fuck is this? So how did he get here? Well, it should come as no surprise that the East lacked center depth, as it always did, and so McGlure was the one who swooped in. I mean, with how many Eastern Conference centers there are in this list, we should kind of put an asterisk on like all these guys who made it in that era, because more often than not, you'd have a guy like McGlure who made it solely based on position. But the funniest part of it all was that he came pretty dang close to becoming the All-Star MVP, actually leading his team with 19 points and 8 rebounds, and could have made a serious case for himself had the East actually won the game. His All-Star selection would be his peak. A finger injury would sideline him for a big chunk of the next season, and he would become an NBA journeyman after that, finishing his career after playing for 8 teams in 12 years. When you ask a regular person who Jamal McGlure is, many people would look at you like a fucking idiot. He was a random selection and has become a touchstone for random and undeserving All-Stars. His selection also sparked debates surrounding the positional requirements around the All-Star game. Now, rather than having a set center, you just need front court or back court players, and guys like Jamal McGlure are part of the reason why that's the case. Jameer Nelson has been considered one of the worst All-Stars the league has ever seen after he was selected for
Yeah,
the
but he
2000.
was, listen, Jermaine Nelson was kind of like the second best player on the Orlando Magic team. So it's kind of like, I don't really agree with that.
All-Star game. He was a sidekick to a dominant Dwight Howard, and was given
Yeah.
a selection alongside both Howard and another teammate, Rashard Lewis. He was a key contributor to the Magic's success that season, averaging 16.7 points and 5.4 assists. And at the time, yeah, the Magic were killing it. So why shouldn't they reward him with 3 spots? Unfortunately, Jameer Nelson was ruled out for the All-Star game due to torn labrum, and would be replaced by Ray Allen, who many people thought was snubbed as he was a huge piece of a successful team as well. He wouldn't be back in action until the finals against the Lakers, but didn't do too much. However, Magic fans were excited to see what their All-Star point guard could do in the following years. After all, at just 26 years old, he was already an All-Star. Surely he would only be getting better, right? Well, not exactly. He wouldn't fall off, but he never got better either. Year after year, he would prove that he could be reliable and get the ball to Dwight Howard. But after Dwight left, the Magic sucked. They went from winning 56% of their games to 24% just because Howard left. I mean, kinda like Mo Williams, Jameer was an accessory piece. He wasn't All-Star level talent-wise, but on the Magic team that had maybe the best pick-and-roll threat ever outside of Karl Malone, Jameer could shoot pull-up threes off of on-ball screens and pass the ball well enough to find D12 rolling or any open shooter on the perimeter. And that was really all that Orlando needed to be elite. When you take all of that into account, you look at his All-Star appearance in a different light. He was given the spot because a prime Dwight Howard carried his team to success, but if not for that, Jameer would have never touched All-Star level. BJ Armstrong's All-Star season came with the Chicago Bulls in the year following Michael Jordan's retirement. As expected, the Bulls were looking for players to step up in the absence of, at the time, their 3-time MVP and superstar, and Armstrong was one of those guys. Once Michael left, he had more of an opportunity to show off his game. His stats were decent, but not by any means amazing. He averaged 15 and 4 as the sidekick to the GOAT's sidekick and Horace Grant. But that didn't matter. The basketball world loved the Bulls with or without MJ, and so when it came time to vote, BJ received the second most votes amongst all Eastern Conference players with 529,000, which earned him the starting point guard spot in the big game. It once again showed off the unique yet flawed voting system from back in the day. There were other guys that were doing it better than him, like Mark Price or Kenny Anderson, but that didn't matter. Chicago Bulls fans were going to get their guys into the game whether or not it was deserved. After this appearance, Armstrong's career would gradually decline. After one more year with MJ, he would go into an expansion draft unprotected and end up playing for Golden State. He would transform into a backup point guard and would see his roles diminish until his time in the league was over in 2000. But his selection remains an interesting piece to the Bulls dynasty. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, subscribe.
When injustice strikes, we must strike back. Assassin's Creed Shadows.
These are some stars who silently slipped out of the NBA without you even knowing, starting with Blake Griffin, who certainly had one ugly ending to his career. Now, nothing about Blake Griffin's game screamed longevity. He was jumping over Kias and Pau Gasol, and was essentially the second coming of Sean Kemp, who notoriously had one of the ugliest NBA exits in history. But even after all of the injuries and after the Clippers' Lob City failure, PG was a legitimate star on the Detroit Pistons in the twilight of his career. Of course, when we remember Blake Griffin, the first thing we're always going to think back at is the high-flying dunks and the inward gravity of his pick-and-roll duo with Chris Paul, and sadly how kinda disappointing that was. But nonetheless, from a nerd's perspective, Blake Griffin's game is pretty fascinating to break down. Throughout the earlier years of his career, Blake Griffin was an absolute star, earning an All-Star selection in the first 5 years, with the main criticism of his game revolving around the way he settled. Blake could dunk on the best defenders in the NBA, and the post-Dwight Howard NBA left him as the best lob target and roll man in the entire league. But similar to Dwight, Blake wasn't taking enough shots where he excelled, or so he thought. He was an inefficient shooter, an unaggressive scorer, and a poor post player throughout his early years. But although at times his play was ugly, he improved greatly through trying to expand on his weaknesses. Blake was probably at his best in around 2014, where he was top 3 in MVP voting, and throughout stretches without Chris Paul was able to carry this Clippers squad. Although his post-game was super ugly, it was weirdly effective, and with his gravity going downhill and his respectable skill with his back to the basket, it really opened up the floor where he was silently one of the best passing bigs that the game has ever seen. Like I said, Blake came out hot, as you probably remember. He was dunking on guys, it was all fun and flashy, and for 5 years, he was an all-star. But as the injuries racked up, Blake Griffin fell out of the spotlight, lost his spot on the Clippers, landed in no man's land Detroit, and seemed to be all but finished. But this is where Blake Griffin put together one of the most underrated comeback stories in NBA history. I mean, this dude had it all. As a Kardashian boy, first overall pick playing in Los Angeles with a game that was entirely based around his God-given talent. But after losing his greatest attribute and his leading ability, BG silently put together his best year in the NBA on a small market team in one of the most unique ways possible. After constantly being criticized for chucking threes when he couldn't shoot the ball efficiently and forcing post touches when that was so clearly not his bread and butter, Blake Griffin was dominating the NBA as a stretch big and a dominant post player. At 24.5, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.4 assists, we got to see a Blake Griffin carry job, and really this thing was pretty incredible. And without the leaping ability that he once had, in 2019 we were all talking about Blake Griffin once again, which was a reality that no one really thought possible. I mean, on 36% from 3 on 7 a game, this was a playstyle shift drastic enough to be compared to guys like Brook Lopez. He played in the pick and roll, in isolation, in the mid-post, and utilized short spurts of quickness to beat bigs off the bounce and finish with touch below the rim. It was crazy to see a guy labeled as unskilled throughout his prime, dominating the NBA on skill alone. Unfortunately, with bruised legs, being asked to carry a heavy load, the injuries continued to pile on. And with a defensive game that was already subpar and the steep decline and the last bit of his athleticism dwindling away, Blake Griffin's resurgence was really cut to a 1-year window. As he bounced to the Nets, then to the Celtics, the injuries had hit him with a knockout blow he couldn't get up from, and put the nail in the coffin of his career. But from a Hall of Fame level peak to a resurgence comparable to very few, Blake Griffin gave us a show to watch for quite a while. In 2020, Montrezl Harrell was your 6th man of the year. In 2021, Montrezl Harrell was putting up a fraction of his 2020 totals. And in 2024, he was out of the NBA altogether. This is one that over the years I've had some struggles to exactly pinpoint the issue on, but stick with me if you will, and let me know in the comments on your opinion, because I'm interested what some of you who may have watched more closely might think. Now, the story of Montrezl Harrell's downfall, in my opinion, comes down to one main thing. In the NBA, there are system players and system makers. You have your Jokic's, you have your Morants, your LeBrons, Lukas, the guys that basically have a gravitational pull that every team they will ever play on will revolve around, and every player that plays with them will aim to complement them. Now, this is a rather basic concept. You got stars and role players, but basketball is as complicated of a sport as you want it to be. When it comes to the PG and Kawhi Clippers, their system was significantly different from those of the guys previously mentioned, as with usage spread around a bit, they weren't relying on individual playmakers as much to create for others. Rather, this was just a deep squad of bucket getters that can lean on each other when one guy was off or one guy was hot. On paper, it was a closer system to, say, the MJ Pippen Bulls than it would be the Steve Nash Suns or James Harden Rockets. If you're following, the reason I'm explaining this to you is to explain my theory on why Montrezl Harrell was able to excel in the Clippers system. In a world of system players and system makers, Montrezl Harrell was very obviously a system player. But as an undersized big who couldn't shoot or defend, his player build was in no way the meta of the NBA. But in a Clippers system that had the best wing defenders in the game, a good point of attack defender in Patrick Beverley, and valued shot creation over playmaking, the Clippers were looking for guys who could scrape together buckets rather than penetrate, distribute, and shoot while their defense did the rest. With a hustle-based game, Montrezl could push in transition, take advantage of lazy defenses, roll hard, crash the offensive glass, and do little things to put together 18 points a game without the coaching staff having to write him up a single play. It was a rather unique element that Montrezl Harrell could add to the game, which he was ultimately rewarded for with the Sixth Man of the Year award. But as exposed by guys like Kenneth Faried before him, it was a rather inefficient way to play the game. With his career at a high points, Harrell would jump ship to the other LA teams, signing with the Lakers after their championship win. In a microscope, the move seemed to be a win. Harrell was of course a major Energizer bunny for the Clips for a few years, and having lost White and JaVale McGee, the Lakers could use just that. But this is where Harrell's career would begin to fall apart. Harrell's stats would take a significant decline down to 13 points per game because his talents could not be utilized in the same way. Like I said before, there are system makers and system players, and within the Lakers, LeBron was Mr. High Usage with P&R partner and Anthony Davis helping create advantages for him to attack on with his inward gravity. Now in a nutshell, this is the way the Lakers offense would operate most efficiently. And with a very meta NBA offense compared to the Clips, they have since been trying to stack their squad with additional playmakers and 3-and-D style role players, really similar to about 90% of teams in the NBA.
Yo, oh my god, an actual bird!
Okay, let's go.
Oh my god, bro!
And this is where things get murky. Sharing the block with AD, Montrezl Harrell was the best player on the team when comparing individual talent to individual talent, but given that to operate the offense most efficiently, you need to give AD room to operate. Playing less talented lineups with better fit players like Markieff Morris and Marc Gasol gave the Lakers a more cohesive unit. This, in a nutshell, was the death of Montrezl Harrell. As a role player, when not in a role he can excel in, he quickly drowned. And as a role player who can only fit a very specific role that not many teams want, he, like other similar players before him, were replaced by worse players who can play more efficient basketball. After somewhat reviving his career, scoring 14 points per game on a shitty Wizards squad, although these buckets were scored on high efficiency, the buckets weren't exactly empty, but given what we saw with the Lakers, competitive teams really had very little need for a player of his skill set. In the era of analytics, I think Montrezl somewhat squeaked by in 2020 by finding a role perfectly fit for his style of play. But after jumping ship, finding a system that needed his skill set was harder than he thought. Andre Drummond was at one point one of the best young centers in the NBA. He was a two-time All-Star, thought of as one of the best defenders at his
Mr. Rebound.
position, the best rebounder since Dennis Rodman, and a guy with a pretty high ceiling all around, I guess. But as of late, people have come to really question this guy's career altogether. First things first, since departing from the Pistons, this guy has been a career journeyman. He's been on a bunch of teams that haven't stuck. He peaked statistically at like 25 years old, and he went on to say he was the best rebounder of all time, which kind of ticked people off. Now, if he wants to say he was the best rebounder of all time, I don't really give two shits. He's probably like top 3. Maybe he's not. Who cares, really? But Andre Drummond as a player has always intrigued me. Now, back since we first saw him, to be honest with you guys, I've always kind of despised Andre Drummond's game. I never was bought into him as an all-star level player. I hated this guy's attitude, and I thought this guy was an overrated defender because of his rebounding. Well, defense is more valuable than rebounding, if that makes sense. Now recently, Andre Drummond has come out and kind of validated this stance when speaking to a bunch of kids regarding his own downfall.
You know, I understand where you guys are and what's going on. I know a lot of it is new. Some of you guys are coming from respected teams where you're the man, you're that guy on your team, and you know, you play 100 minutes, you score 1,000 points, X, Y, and Z. This is not what this is, fellas. And the sooner you guys realize it, is the better. But to be pouting on the bench, making faces, not cheering your teammates on when we're down 8 the entire game, come back and go up by 3, and you're not celebrating that, I'm gonna tell you something. Fellas, I was that guy. I was a $100 million guy. I was pouting, I was upset when I wasn't playing, and I had a bad attitude. I went from $100 million to a league minimum. It's a personal story I'm sharing with you guys right now. They don't care how many rebounds you get, how many threes you make. They care about you being as a person. Are you a good teammate? Are you a good locker room guy? Are you someone they can count on each and every night? I talked about consistency. You play 100% every single time you step on that floor. Consistency, fellas. Consistency.
Now, this is pretty interesting. Most of us remember Drummond's prime that included 2 All-Star selections as well as 16 and 15 averages. Drummond was athletic as shit, he was talented as hell, and he put up some pretty big totals over his time in Detroit. He was a fantasy basketball god, but as a player, Drummond was nothing special outside of his ability to rebound the ball. He couldn't protect the rim to an elite level. He really didn't even try to defend it that well. He wanted to be more than he was, as he would demand touches, try to create for teammates, and score inside the lane, while his touch was not very good whatsoever, and while being super turnover prone in the process. Detroit sucked ass at this time, just chucking a million darts at the board, and the only one that stuck for an extended period seemed to be Andre Drummond, who played on the team from 2012 to the 2019-2020 season, where at only 26 years old, he would be moved to Cleveland and his career would begin to fall off. Now with the Cavs, Drummond did look like Drummond, but very quickly, as he would be moved to LA, we would see the packages in return really quickly fall off for someone who was supposed to be an all-star level player. Really, this guy wasn't worth too much at all. As a guy with a skill set closer to DeAndre Jordan than Marc Gasol, he was kind of trying to be that Marc Gasol kind of player, which was all fun and games when on a shitty Pistons squad, but with no Dwight or JaVale on these Lakers, they wanted him to fill in that role, which his skill set was better suits. And eventually, the Nets and Sixers were kind of looking for the DeAndre Drummond as well, which Andre Drummond could really no longer be as his athleticism declined. I don't take any joy or satisfaction in the fact that Andre Drummond's career went pretty downhill after his time in Detroit, but seeing Drummond open up and begin to point the finger at himself is definitely a great example for younger players. Although he was definitely out there hustling and being that energy guy on the bench, it really seemed like he was doing so to earn the reputation as the rebounding guy, and as selfishness proved to be a career killer, it in a way tarnished everything he was able to accomplish and killed his future in the process. Now, Kendrick Nunn was a guy who came from nowhere, and by the looks of things was going to be around for the long haul. After going undrafted and getting his chance on the finals run underdog 2020 Heat, Kendrick Nunn was certainly one of the bright spots of the season, finishing second in Rookie of the Year voting. I mean, the guy was 24 and closer to his ceiling than pretty much every rookie, of course, but at 15 points per game in his first year of NBA basketball, that's a lot better than a lot of players at their peak that etched out long careers in the NBA. Fast forward just a few years later, and Kendrick Nunn is out of the league entirely. It's unfortunate for sure, given that this was one of the feel-good stories of that season, but given the context and his unfortunate circumstances, it's not exactly surprising. Now, what exactly was going on in Miami that year? Well, really, when it came to scoring the ball, there was kind of some shots to go around. With Tyler Hero still in diapers, and the Heat stars and Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Buckets being very solid facilitators at their position, the shot creation ability of Kendrick Nunn was put to great use here. At 44 and 35% shooting splits, he wasn't necessarily the most efficient, but he was given a great opportunity to play in a great system that maximized his ability under coach Eric Spoelstra, who at this point really should be looked at amongst some of the best to ever do it. It was a special year that earned him recognition. Of course, second place in Rookie of the Year voting is quite the achievement.
Mm. Hold up, gotta make sure. Okay, the camera's good. Wait, why is it so lagging? Wait, bro, is it lagging that much? No way. Is the camcorder? Nah, that can't be right. Nah, you can't be serious. Is it that bad? Nah, is it that bad? Listen, I'll rewatch the live stream. It'll be fine.
Especially for undrafted talents, but come playoff time, Spo struggled
Block
to find
that
the
shit.
same magic with Nunn, cutting his minutes in half and deferring to more experienced talent like Goran Dragic to get the job done. And for this squad to make it to the finals with this talent, you really couldn't argue with the decision. It's tough to watch your team excel with a limited role comparative to what you're used to, I'm sure, but come the next season, Kendrick Nunn looked even better. At a slightly reduced 14.6 a game, Nunn was scoring on elite efficiency up near 50-40-90. I mean, there's a ton of really solid shot creators on the market, and although it's more than likely that Nunn's talents were slightly inflated given the system he was playing in, Nunn had a very impressive skill set that a bench unit near him would likely love to get their hands on. And that's exactly what happened when the Lakers snatched him up the following season. but not before a knee injury would ruin all the momentum that he was building. After a failed stint with LA and a run that mostly consisted of garbage time minutes with the Wizards, it appeared that post the arrow to the knee, he had difficulty getting to spots and creating space effectively, matched with the mental exhaustion that comes with not being what you once were. For lack of a better word, at 27 years old, Kendrick Nunn was unfortunately washed and out of the NBA. To give you a bit of a happy ending, after taking his career overseas, it looks like Nunn may have found the perfect fit for his talents. I'm not sure if his goal is making it back to an NBA roster or building a career over there, but at 20 points per game on 55% from the field and 40% from deep, I don't know too much about EuroLeague basketball, but I know enough to know this guy's playing out of his mind. This is a strangely happy ending to an otherwise pretty unfortunate fall, but in the case of Nikola Mirotic, his story is just out of the ordinary all around. Every year, NBA players head back to Europe after realizing they couldn't cut it in the NBA. Some EuroLeague MVPs have flopped hard, but that isn't the case for Nikola Mirotic. He was in his prime, had a big NBA contract waiting for him with multiple teams not putting down the phone with big-time offers for his big-time talent. Yet still, chose to leave the NBA to go back to Europe. And when he first explained why, he wasn't telling the whole truth. Years later, he finally revealed what happened. He finished second in Rookie of the Year voting in 2015 behind Andrew Wiggins. This guy was a big shooter, scoring double digits his whole career, while being able to create a little bit and score on 3 levels. As D. Rose, Jimmy Butler, and Pau Gasol left the Bulls, it was time for Mirotic to take on a bigger role. Until a teammate literally broke his face. During a preseason practice, Mirotic and Bobby Portis got into it. Reports say Mirotic lunged at Portis twice, and Portis responded with a single punch that gave Mirotic a concussion and broke multiple bones in his face. He missed 23 games, nearly a third of the season. The Bulls suspended Portis for just 8 games, and when Mirotic demanded they chose between them, the Bulls sided with Bobby Portis. Mirotic was eventually traded to New Orleans, where he thrived, having his best days in the NBA, averaging 16 points on 43% from deep. His success led to a trade to Milwaukee, where the Bucks saw him as a key piece on a contending team, looking for third or fourth option scoring with hopes of a championship run. ESPN called the trade a grand slam, and really, it seemed to be. Despite injuries, he was a very valuable role player and entered free agency as a sought-after piece for contending teams. While vacationing back home in Greece after the season, Mirotic's agent called with a 3-year, $50 million offer from the Utah Jazz. I mean, this is big-time money any way you want to look at it. And given his age at 27 years old, this was his best and possibly his only chance to get this type of payday in his career. If he got on the plane, he was signing with Utah. But as he sat at the airport, he had a moment of clarity. Why was he even here? Instead of boarding the flights, he turned around and went back to his hotel. At 27 years old, he signed with Barcelona, making him the highest paid player in all of Europe, though still for less than the Utah offer. When asked why he left, he gave a typical answer. He felt limited in the NBA, wanted a bigger role, and believed he had yet to play his best basketball. But years later, he revealed the real answer. Mirotic has always been deeply religious and family-oriented. He and his wife had their first son in 2013, and he struggled with missing key moments. The NBA's 82-game schedule meant constant travel, time away from home, and little balance.
Yeah,
He had a personal
Listen,
crisis
bro, he chose about family, bro. That's cool.
and decided for the first time to put family over basketball. In Europe, Mirotic dominated. He won a league MVP, he won a couple titles, while still being one of the most sought-after players outside of the NBA. Many couldn't understand why he left, but by the time he finally told the truth, he had already proved himself. Even now playing in Italy, I can't imagine he wants to go back to the nation that he got his face punched in at. Kenneth Faried's name still rings a bell for tons of NBA fans, because not too long ago he was an Olympic team selection and fresh off a $50 million contract. The Manimal was a force in nature, freakish putback dunks, relentless energy, and double-doubles on a nightly basis. Yet despite staying relatively healthy, Faried disappeared from the league almost without warning. After moving on from the Carmelo Anthony era, the 2011 Denver Nuggets were scrambling to rebuild. With the 22nd pick in the draft, their options were very limited, but Faried's non-stop motor made him a risk worth taking. At just 6'8" without a reliable jumper, he wasn't the prototypical power forward or anywhere close to it. But after setting the NCAA Division I rebounding record, it was clear he'd find a way to make an impact in one way or another. Despite a roster full of misfit pieces, with Danilo Gallinari providing wing scoring and Ty Lawson running the points, Denver was a high-energy team that defied expectations. They finished 38-28, and while they weren't a title contender, they were undeniably a blast to watch. No player embodied that energy more than the Manimal. Freed quickly made a name for himself in the NBA. He cleaned the glass like very few, with high-flying dunks and transition play that made him a fan favorite. He earned a starting spot after the Nuggets moved on from Nene, finishing third in Rookie of the Year voting, with averages of 10 points and 8 rebounds per game. His impact was immediate. He didn't need 35 minutes a night to put up an insane stat line like a 27-point, 17-rebound game in just 22 minutes. That season ended in a first-round loss to the Lakers, but the Nuggets had overachieved. A team with a 5'10 point guard, an undersized power forward, and no clear star had taken Kobe and Pau to 7 games. This wasn't just a gimmicky team. They played shockingly effective basketball, and no one poured more heart into it than Fareed. Looking to capitalize on their success, the Nuggets traded for Andre Iguodala the next season. It was a good move for a team built on selflessness, pace, and relentless energy. Fareed improved again, averaging 11.5 and 9 rebounds, while earning top 20 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Denver finished the year on an insane 31-6 run, securing the 3rd seed in the West with sky-high expectations. Unfortunately, this is where it all unraveled. The Nuggets ran into a young Warriors team that in hindsight was in the beginning of a new era. Golden State's efficiency exposed Denver's flaws, and they fell in 6 games. That series wasn't just the end of a promising season, it was the beginning of the Nuggets' decline. Coach of the Year George Karl was fired, Iguodala left in free agency, Gallinari suffered a major injury. Fareed, however, was the one who took another leap forward, averaging 14 points and 9 rebounds in 27 minutes. He was rewarded with a spot on Team USA and a massive $50 million contract. At this point, it seemed like Fareed was on the verge of something special, but in reality, his downfall had just begun. That summer, the Nuggets drafted Jusuf Nurkic and Nikola Jokic. Though it wasn't immediately obvious, Denver had just drafted his replacements. Fareed continued to put up respectable numbers for a couple more seasons, but cracks in his game became too big to ignore. He was an elite energy guy, but energy alone wasn't enough. His lack of a jumper, post move, or any real offensive versatility made him easy to scheme against. Defensively, his hustle was undeniable, but at 6'8", he struggled on the glass against bigger players and wasn't a great shot blocker or help defender. By the 2016-2017 season, nagging back injuries and the emergence of younger, more skilled bigs pushed him out of the rotation. He dropped to 9 points per game, then 6 the following season. When asked about Fareed's dwindling minutes, Coach Michael Malone bluntly stated, "Why should I play him?" At just 28 years old, Fareed was expected expendable. Denver moved on and he landed in Houston, a team that seemed like the perfect fit. The Rockets had found success with undersized energy bigs like PJ Tucker and Clint Capella. For a moment, it looked like Fareed was making a comeback. He averaged 13 points and 8 rebounds in a brief stint with the Rockets. But even in the best possible system, his flaws were glaring. He wasn't a reliable offensive threat, struggled to defend, and was a liability in an analytics-driven NBA that prioritized efficiency. And just like that,
Hold up, bro. Okay. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Welcome to the best live stream ever.
he was done. Fareed's rapid exit from the NBA seemed shocking, but in reality, the writing had been on the wall for years. He was never as good as his raw numbers suggested. and as the league evolved, his limitations became impossible to ignore. His athleticism and energy were elite, but his skill set never expanded whatsoever. Despite a massive payday and early career accolades, Fareed coasted instead of adapting. You guys remember the debates Warriors fans used to have about whether the team should build around Steph Curry or Monte Ellis. Back in the late 2000s, this was
I'm
a
so happy the Warriors chose Steph Curry, bro. Like Monte Ellis was a good player, I know everything. I know. But still, bro, Stephen Curry is Stephen Curry. I don't need to explain why Stephen Curry is such a great player. He is one of the best all time. I'm so happy. I grew up with Steph in the era I could have watched him live and stuff. So yeah.
real arguments. At his peak, Monte was an electrifying 6'3 combo guard, blazing fast, dangerous off the pick and roll, and capable of finishing at the rim or knocking down jumpers in the mid range. He was putting up big time numbers, even scoring 26 points per game in the playoffs just a few years before his career came to an end. So, what happened to him? Monte Ellis was drafted to the Warriors in the second round of the 2005 draft. After a quiet rookie season where he averaged just 7 points on 41% shooting, he broke out in his second year, putting up 17 points and 4 assists per game as part of the legendary We Believe Warriors team that shocked the world by upsetting the top-seeded Mavericks in the playoffs. The next season, he took another leap, averaging 20 points and 4 assists while shooting an incredible 53% from the field, his most efficient season ever. At this point, Monte looked like a future franchise player, but then things took a turn. In the summer of 2008, Ellis tore a ligament in his ankle. Initially, he told the team it happened while working out, but it was later revealed that he actually got injured in a moped accident, a direct violation of his contract. The Warriors responded by suspending him for 30 games, and when he finally returned, he didn't quite look the same. To make things more complicated, the team drafted Steph Curry in 2009, which created tension between the two guards. At Media Day that year, when a reporter asked Monte if he could see himself and Curry thriving together, his response was brutally honest. He flat out said he didn't like the idea of playing alongside another small guard. The comments caused an awkward situation with the organization, and even Monte's wife had to step in, telling him he needed to apologize. Eventually, he let go his frustrations, cleared things up with Curry, and moved forward. Despite Monte's concerns, the two played together for a few seasons. In 2010, Ellis had arguably his best statistical year, leading the team in scoring with 25 points per game. At one point, he even claimed he was the second best player in the league behind Kobe Bryant. But
Oof.
as good as he was, his inefficiency and ball dominance became major issues. In his final season with the Warriors, he averaged 21 points but needed 19 shots per game to get there. The front office had a decision to make: continue building around Monte or commit to Steph Curry.
Okay, basically I have to. My PS Plus is expired, bruv. So yeah, I'm just going to see my pretty face. Okay, because I need to buy a new PS Plus and I don't want to get hacked or some stuff. So I got another viewer. Let's go. 2 people viewing. So basically buying PS Plus extra right now because yeah. Okay. Do. Okay, let's buy, of course, the cheapest one because we are cheap people. Let go. Yeah, okay, this one. Yeah, let's just buy a 20. Yeah, let's buy a 20. Okay. No, not this. Okay. Accept this. Mm, Let me see. Yeah, oh, okay, I already got some money in the account. That's good. Okay. Guys. Let me do 25 because then I can also buy it back. Okay, let's buy this. Okay, let's go. Yes, pay it. I don't like it. Yeah, because I don't want to swap in codes that people couldn't steal my stuff. Nah, Beth, not going to be me. It's not going to be me. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. I get it. I got it. Okay, finally got the PS Plus again. Okay. Oh, why is this stuff bugging? Why is it so? Oh, it wasn't live. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? The whole shit was not active because it was live. Okay, yeah, I got a PS4. I know. Updates, bruh. Mm, shit is perfect. Okay, everything is good. With update stuff. Let's see this. Yeah, this looks fine. Like this one. Should I do this? Like this? It's like the better one. I actually have no clue. I'd just keep it what it is. I like to play video games. Okay, bruv. Okay, let's go to the store. Let's buy some packs. I haven't played FIFA in a while, though. I haven't played FIFA because it was stressing me out too much. Okay, single draft up because bruv, we don't care. Let's get straight to this. Uh, FIFA points. Let me see if I can buy a quick pack. Let me see. Oh, okay. Okay, let's now do this. Yeah, okay. See you guys, everyone. Bye.